Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. First of all, I'd like to refer members to my register of interests as the Chair of Moving On Inverclyde and also an ambassador for the Ocean Youth Trust for Scotland. Long before my election to this Parliament, I had a firm belief that the state cannot fix everything. Sometimes the state is actually the bearer of the problems in the first instance. So it really is important and absolutely crucial that we actually have a very strong third sector in our communities. It can be more flexible, it can act quicker, and also deal with events, often making it more efficient. Now, it can also take a more person-centred approach in contrast to some public sector services where impact is measured by how many people can actually be seen. Now, Safe Harbour in my constituency is a prime example of this approach. Now, having both public and third sector organisations working together in our communities is essential. And I've spoken of my involvement with Moving On Inverclyde in this chamber before, and over the last decade the organisation has changed immeasurably. It's now engaging with many more people locally. It's a stronger reputation locally. We'll be expanding into new premises in Port Glasgow, and it has a partnership agreement with Your Voice, also another third sector organisation, to deliver a particular project for the Inverclyde Alcohol and Drugs Recovery Service. The flexibility and the improved outcomes for people who need these services is really what is important, irrespective as to who delivers for them. Presiding Officer, the COVID-19 pandemic brought trauma and pain for many people, and it was also resulted in some remarkable activity within all of our communities. The public sector pivoted practically overnight in many cases, and the number of people volunteering was remarkable, and the third sector pulled together like nothing I've ever seen before. And fundamentally, the partnership between both public and third sector was imperative. Neither could have supported my community alone. And these are just a couple of local examples of why the third sector are absolutely crucial to the nation. On a national scale, and I welcome the SNP Scottish Government's delivering the multi-year funding and committing to develop an agreement with the third sector to strengthen its voice and also improve lives. This third sector partnership, as the Cabinet Secretary touched upon, will set out how the Scottish Government and the third sector can work together to enhance services. And this includes protecting the sector's future and independence with fairer funding, the focus on shared goals to improve outcomes for people and communities, and also providing greater opportunity to contribute to policy and also service design. Sure.
Stephen Kerr.
I don't want to let that passage of his speech pass without offering a correction to Stuart McMillan. I'm not sure the Cabinet Secretary did make a full-on commitment to multi-year funding. I think she's very gingerly approaching the subject. Perhaps some people might say too slowly, but I don't think there's a wholesale commitment to multi-year funding. At least I didn't hear that, unless the Cabinet Secretary is going to contradict me.
Stuart McMillan.
No, I think certainly Mr Kerr is obviously very accustomed to challenging, and quite rightly so. I certainly, with what I heard from the Cabinet Secretary earlier, and also part of the discussion earlier on too, Sure.
Cabinet Secretary.
This is a rather strange way of trying to address Stephen Kerr's point, so I'm grateful to the member for giving me the opportunity to say that we have already progressed fairer funding. That's why 60% of grants in my portfolio are now in fairer funding, and I have a commitment to continue the progress towards fairer funding right across government, and I hope that helps the member and indeed Mr Kerr.
Stuart McMillan.
So Mr Kerr is sadly shaking his head in disagreement. But that's not for the first time. Yeah, it's not for the first time, as we all know, in this chamber. So, Presiding Officer, I think this pilot is the first step in actually mainstreaming multi-year funding agreements more widely and across the third sector, giving organisations the ability to plan and make the most of their resources. Now, I touched upon Moving On Inverclyde, which I'm going to come on to in a moment. Now, the Greens amendment referencing the annual £75 million cost charities need to pay for the employer national insurance contribution is affecting organisations across the country. And that's £75 million being spent on something that actually could be utilised in the front line. Now, the decisions taken to manage the extra burden will have a wider knock-on effects for communities. And we all know that British Heart Foundation have announced it's going to close around 150 shops across the UK, and Cancer Research UK are also planning to close around 190 of its high street shops by April 2027. Now, this policy introduced by Labour at Westminster is highly destructive and that's destroying jobs and also making the trading environment impossible for many good local organisations. Now, the Conservative amendment is somewhat confusing in addition to adding a bureaucratic nightmare to manage. Third sector organisations obtain funding from a wide variety of sources on an annual basis. They don't only get money from government. So as such, with the Conservative amendments that we are discussing today, in 1 year, an organisation might fall into whatever criteria the Conservatives are arguing for, but then the next year they might fall out of that criteria because of where the funding comes from. So that would then potentially mean organisations really fluctuating on an annual basis as to whether they should be reporting or not reporting. So I do think that the Conservative amendment is actually quite ridiculous, and it would add costs and become even more bureaucratic for organisations. And I do find it a bit strange that the Conservatives actually are arguing for more red tape, in contrast to actually trying to reduce some of the red tape to allow organisations to deliver in our communities. So I'm conscious, I'm sorry, Mr Kim, I'm just about to finish, because I've already, unless the Presiding Officer can let me take the... No, I'm just about to finish. So Presiding Officer, fundamentally, without the third sector, our communities would look very different, and our constituents are very much the richer for all of their existence within the communities. Thank you very much.